Hey you guys, it's Vivian and I'm back again with my very first paint with me video. Let's get into it. The first thing I like to do is prep my area. I use an old sheet to protect my floor and furniture because as we all know, acrylic paint does not come out. Next, I like to gather all of the supplies that I'm going to need. By the way, this is the Micheals Artist Loft 18 by 24 canvas. And of course we gotta set the mood. I like to burn sage and listen to music while I paint. Before I start, I'm going to sand and add gesso to the canvas. Gesso is pretty much an acrylic primer. It usually takes about an hour for this stuff to dry, but I used a blow dryer, so it cut down my drying time significantly. So this is my first time painting in about 9 months, and for whatever reason, I thought it would be a good idea to free paint rather than sketch it out on a canvas first. Let me tell you guys something. Free painting is so hard. Oh my goodness, it took me 2 days to complete this painting. Needless to say, I will definitely be using a sketch next time. Right now, I'm just adding the base color. I believe this is a mixture of burnt sienna, white, and just a hint of yellow because she does have a little bit of a yellow undertone to her skin. At this stage, I also like giving shape to the facial features, so the eyes, the mouth, the nose. I also try to be mindful of my brush strokes as I'm painting the cheeks, the cupid's bow, the forehead. This allows it to give it a little more definition as you go. So if you watched my previous videos, then you know I recently ordered a bunch of Liquitex heavy body paints. So this is actually my first time using it, and I did find it to be very pigmented, more so than the Liquitex basics, of course. And the consistency was much thicker, but it didn't spread as well as I was expecting to. So I think next time I paint, I'm gonna try using a mixing medium and hopefully it'll blend easier. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, there were a few points during this painting where I got a little nervous. I was like, this does not look like this girl at all. I am butchering this portrait. My friend is fitting to cuss me out. But I think the key is you really have to just trust yourself and trust the process and have fun with it, especially when doing acrylic paints, because them layers, they add up and they start looking like something after a little while. I find the hardest part of doing a portrait is painting the nose. I actually had to stop midway through and find a YouTube video on how to do it correctly because I really didn't want to mess this one up. I actually found a really great video by this lady named Feildey. So her channel is Feildey TV Art and Tutorials. I'm going to add her link because it was so helpful. The nose, it started to take shape, but you know, I had to come back to it because it was just a little too difficult and I had other things to do. So 2 things are happening right now. 1, I'm trying my best to match her skin tone. So as I said, this is my first time using the Liquitex heavy body paints. When I paint with the Liquitex basics, I usually mix together my own browns. And it was so much easier for me to match the skin tones because as I was building the color, I would always take undertones and stuff like that into consideration. But this time, I'm using the heavy body burnt sienna as my base and trying to build off of that. And because I'm not too familiar with the pigments, it was definitely a challenge. Secondly, I'm adding definition to her face. When I do this, I like to compare it to putting on makeup. You're basically just highlighting, contouring, and blending. So if you could beat your face, then you could beat a canvas, sis. Pick up a brush. I feel like my biggest challenge with this piece was blending. The paint was drying extremely fast, so every time I went to blend the colors together, they were already dry. I tried using water and it helped a little bit, but I feel like the paints would have come out so much better if I had a mixing medium. I'm definitely going to invest in a Liquitex slow dry mixing medium. It's already in my Blake cart. I apply the same rules for lips as I do for painting faces. So you start with your base coat, you add your contours, and then you add your highlights. To get this color, I used white with a small amount of red, as well as some of the paint that I used for her skin tone. To get the highlight color, you just add more white, and to get the contour color, you just add more red. I forgot to mention this before, but when creating a darker shade of brown, do not use black. Black will ruin your color. Instead, use a really dark blue like Prussian blue and just a small amount of it. It'll darken it perfectly for your contour color. So this is day 2 of painting. Right now I'm just working on adding some detail to the eyes using a darker color brown. For the eyebrows, I'm using an even deeper shade of brown, but I'm just marking out the area. It's more so shadowing it, so I'm not adding any fine details like hairs and stuff. I'll do that later on. I told you guys before that I was working extremely hard to try to match this girl's skin tone. So what you see now is me just going in again with different shades of contours and highlights, just trying to get a little closer to what it's supposed to be. But as you add in the details, you can see her face is really taking shape and it's getting to more of a 3-dimensional form rather than just flat one surface like it was when all I had was the base color. Also, I started using my Sta-wet palette to try to keep my colors from drying out too quickly, and I must say it made a huge difference with the blending. I mean, I still plan to go out and get the mixing medium. However, I'm just glad I was able to get the effect that I needed for this particular portrait. Ears have always been a bit tricky for me. I normally just draw a few squiggly lines and call it a day, but today I wanted to try something different. So to give her ear a more realistic look, I added highlights and contours to give it shape and definition. For the base coat for the eyes, I used a really light shade of gray. I feel like it gives more of a realistic look because nobody's eyes are purely white. And for the pupils, I mixed together burnt sienna and Prussian blue to get this really deep brown color. For her eyebrows, I tried to do thin strokes in multiple directions in order to give it a more realistic appeal. I did the same thing for her lashes, but you know, this is my first time trying to do realistic eyebrows and eyelashes, so I think I did okay. Painting 4C hair is really difficult, especially if you're a beginner like myself. But the trick is to be constantly moving your brush in different directions. It's also important to paint multiple layers and to be aware of your highlights and shadows. But don't worry, I'm going to post a 4C hair tutorial. Now look at her. Now we just have to add a few final touches and we'll be all done. For her necklace, I started with a base of bright gold mixed with titanium white. Next, I went over the more yellow parts of the necklace with a layer of bright gold. To get the shadow effect as well as add the rings to the necklace, I used a mixture of bright gold and ivory black. I used white as a highlight in order to indicate the brighter areas of the necklace. And then I went back in with my black and gold mixture in order to define the rings a bit more. And for a final touch, I added another layer of bright gold. And there you have it. I'm so glad I stuck with it and didn't quit like I wanted to. I have to work on the eyes, but it came out better than I thought it would. My takeaway for today is definitely trust the process and be patient. I hope you enjoyed. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.